Hello everyone, it's me Seagull, and I'm back with another Gallology classic. Today I'm going to talk about my history professor, who is very bad. Now at my college, I had mostly great professors, and some of them I still talk to today, and they made a huge positive impact on my life. But others just showed the example of what not to do as a professor, such as this one. So the first time I had him was a class that was only online, so already you know it's not going to be a waste of money at all. And this class is mandatory for all history education majors at the school, and anyone who went through it will tell you that it was an absolute nightmare. For example, one of the assignments was to read 30-page articles and answer a prompt, but here's the catch. The prompt was random and you only had time to copy and paste your answer. So let's just say you're assigned 5 articles, you had to read each of them and write a 300-word response, and you only turn in one and get rewarded for just one of them, which is not how you're supposed to teach or give assignments, because you know you're just going to demotivate people real fast. And also the tests were designed to be as confusing as possible, and I also wasn't alone in thinking this. Like, I'm not just the dumb person in the class. And he would just give you a bad grade on assignments and never explain why. And that was the only D I got in college. Now that I think about it, part of my reason to switch from an education major to a history major was so that I wouldn't have to retake that class. Now this specific professor wouldn't be as memorable, I should say, if he was just a regular guy that I had for one random class, but instead he was also the professor for the capstone class. This means that all the history students would have to write a paper and pass the class in order to graduate and get a history degree, and this was harder than expected. For some reason, he was one of the main people that would teach the capstone class, even though the upperclassmen in the department would tell like horror stories about him and urge the underclassmen to avoid it as much as we could, but unfortunately I was unable to. You see, this guy's main specialty was local regional history, and of course everyone has their specialties, and local history is very important, but this guy acted like it was the most important. And to compare, I had another similar class where the professor's specialty was colonial American history, and he was perfectly fine with people doing their papers on their own thing. This guy, not so much. For example, he would always grill the students on their proposals, quote-unquote not having enough primary sources, and would try and steer them away from their chosen topic as much as possible, which is bullshit for the most part. Like, my friend wanted to do a paper pertaining to her city and the neighboring city, since they're both part of the same metropolitan area, and they share a lot of the same culture. And the guy was like, it will be difficult since it's such a large area. But then he proposes she just do it on her city, but include an entire region that would fit into his field. Like, oh, this one area is too big, but this larger area that I coincidentally happen to specialize in would be perfect. You can tell that he was just completely biased, like my other friend did his paper on the Battle of Britain, a topic with a ton of coverage, and got that same lecture. But if a student were to do a paper on like how the 10th governor of the state farted, he would be like, oh, that is such a great topic. I'm sure you will have no problem with the research on such a wonderful topic. And also keep in mind, I am not from the area that the college was in, and I went out of state. And while, yeah, local regional history is definitely important, you can't expect everyone to get the energy to research and write a paper on a topic they aren't interested in. My chosen topic was the liberation of Paris, and at first he pulled the primary sources thing on me until I collected them and was able to get his approval. And then we entered the second phase. Research. Now, normally professors will guide you to archives and libraries and how to access them, and this guy did, just with the college library and nothing else. Now, my college's library did have the information that I needed in books, but I probably wouldn't find original documents about the liberation of Paris or anything outside the local area. He just had this mindset of everybody should be doing their paper on local history, so I'll only give them resources about local history and nothing else, instead of teaching us how to navigate like the Library of Congress or whatever. For me, I was able to get my sources from books that I already had, and I knew enough French to navigate the Paris Musee's online archive. Now, with my idea, he still kept saying I didn't have an argument, so I got one, and still kept saying I didn't have an argument. So I showed this paper to some professors I was close with, and one that specialized in World War II, and they all said that my argument was good. So it was a case of him just not knowing the subject. You know, usually other professors would get help from each other to see if the information was actually good, but no, he just wanted to judge everything himself because he had to be the most knowledgeable person in the room. And speaking of which, he would always say, never dumb down your paper, expect your target audience to have basic understanding of what you're writing about. But this guy asked me to put in an explanation for what Operation Overlord is. for D-Day! The guy also tried scaring us if any one of us had dreams or aspirations for a career in the history field. Yes, I know it is hard to get a career, and it's something that you need to take into account and be warned about. Like, you can't expect to be mediocre and then have a job immediately after college. But instead of teaching us how to actually do it, he kept going on about how it's so hard and we're not going to make it at all. At one point, he even said that if he were applying for professor jobs today, he wouldn't make it. That sounds like a you problem. One class period was dedicated to giving graduate school advice, and I missed it because I had a migraine, but I talked to friends afterwards about what advice he had since I'm looking to go into graduate school, and they just said it was the most depressing class ever. Like, he kept saying you wouldn't make it over and over again and not giving any good actual advice. On second thought, I'm glad I missed the class, even though I would have applied to graduate school anyway, because, I didn't want to go in there and have my dreams crushed or come out, super freaked out, like, oh, what if I don't make it? What if the major's useless? So the class continues to go on normally, we submit our drafts and he gives feedback, and when doing a feedback session, he genuinely seemed helpful and optimistic, and I was feeling good about my paper. However, I eventually received the paper and opened it up to find out that he put so many annotations that were completely not addressed in his meeting with me. By this time, I had like a week or two to work on the final, and maybe it's my fault for not asking him sooner, but I did ask him along with some of my friends and other professors for feedback, and then it comes. The final day. I'm gonna have to pull an all-nighter. Since the bulk of the paper is written, I spend the rest of the night making citations and revisions and rewriting sections to make it make more sense. At the point where it was nearing 5 a.m., I suddenly feel my body start to give up. The words just blend together. I can't even process what I'm reading. And the massive amount of caffeine I consumed isn't doing its job anymore. It is completely worn out, and I decided to lay down for a bit. 2 hours later at 7 a.m., I look out the window and see the bright morning sun shining into my room, and I go back to work on my paper. I'm writing until I realize I'm almost done, and all I have to do is my last puzzle. In this paper, I gave a brief overview of each of the main players, and I described the life of Charles de Gaulle. Basic things like he was born on November 22nd, 1890 in Lille and served in World War I and so on and so forth, but this guy wanted a citation. Now, pretty much every biographer has written about de Gaulle's backstory, so how do I cite something that is common knowledge among Gaulologists? Well, I have a solution. I am so tired, and I'm pissed off, that I just go to the digital archive of the city of Lille, find his birth certificate, and cite it. Like, you want to know when he was born? Okay, I got it. Here's the citation. So I do some last minute tweaks and turn it in before 9 a.m. because that's when I need to be in class, and I also had to print out the paper, so I just do that real quick and haul my sleep-deprived self over to the classroom. We discuss each other's paper, and I give an overview of the paper, and then I walk outside. I am free, but I'm not done yet, because for whatever reason, he gives me a C. A C! He didn't even explain why, and I genuinely think he didn't understand what the paper was about. Earlier in the semester, when, we were explaining our topics and I got to mine, he just didn't really understand it and told me to see the professor that did specialize in World War II. That combined with, needing a description for Operation Overlord and also all my other professors saying the paper is fine is what made me come to this conclusion. However, C's do get degrees, and I ended up graduating, and while I couldn't really handle any more info on de Gaulle or World War II at all for that while, I ended up going to Ireland and later France, which made me get my passion for history back, and then pun intended, the rest is history. My friend is still back at the school, and he always, talks to students about how he's doing all this crazy stuff. Basically, he's doing the same thing. And also, apparently, he accused, a student falsely of using AI, and the student had to, defend themselves and prove that they did not use AI. He's probably gonna see this video, and, maybe he's, the type to play it in class and say, oh, look at how triggered this person is. And even though I did get a C on the paper, hey, I enjoyed it. And also, guess what? At least I did not use AI. Thank you for watching, and this is Seagull, and I'll see ya.